Jessica's birthday dinner was supposed to be one of those golden memories you tuck away and revisit during quieter years. Candlelight, rooftop skyline, clinking glasses, the hum of low conversation punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter. She had picked this trendy rooftop lounge in Midtown Atlanta, and honestly, it fit her. Modern, polished, perfectly curated. The kind of place that made you feel like things were still okay. That life was still happening. Still alive, still vibrant. But from the moment we arrived, something wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly. It wasn't something she said or did. Not at first. It was more like a shift in the air. A weird undercurrent that didn't match the mood. Jessica looked stunning. She always did when she tried, and tonight she had tried. New black dress I hadn't seen before. Fresh manicure. Heels she normally wouldn't wear unless there was some kind of event with cameras involved. Her makeup was done just right, that natural but not look she'd mastered. But the way she kept adjusting her hair and checking her reflection in the dark window beside her seat, it was subtle but it registered. She wasn't looking for my approval. Midway through the appetizers, her phone lit up on the table. She flipped it over in a flash, like she was swatting away a fly. The screen was angled just right, though, and I caught it. A message preview from someone saved as RT Logistics. The name alone didn't mean anything to me. Not then. But the message said, "Missed last night already?" And that told me everything I needed to know. Or at least enough to start connecting dots I hadn't realized were even there. I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have. Maybe that would have changed how everything unfolded. But instead I just watched her. She was quick. She knew I saw something. So she laughed, suddenly and loudly, like someone had just said the funniest thing in the world. Then she leaned into the conversation next to her, tossing a joke into the mix, reaching across the table to clink her glass with a friend's. It was all too perfect, too fluid. A little performance dropped in with just enough force to shake off suspicion. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time. Not the first time she redirected like that. Not the first night she looked incredible and acted distant. It was like I had just tuned into a movie halfway through, and all the little scenes from earlier, scenes I'd brushed off as harmless, started to take on a new tone. The new wardrobe she once mocked other women for. The uptick in her work commitments. Her sudden interest in fitness again, not for health but for aesthetics. The way she started wearing perfume to casual dinners. I hadn't thought much of it before. I chalked it up to changes, growth, her new era, as she'd put it once. But now that message, that name, that tone, it didn't feel like growth. It felt like a pivot, a redirection of energy away from us, away from home. I watched her for the rest of the night, trying not to seem obvious. She was laughing a lot, like a lot, more than usual. And not just at funny things, at filler comments, awkward pauses, bad jokes. At things that didn't really deserve laughter. Like she was overcompensating. Like she was trying to win an audience that had already bought the ticket. And her phone? It buzzed again. Twice. Once during dessert. Once when she got up to take a quick call from her mom. But she didn't take the call on speaker, like she usually did with her mom. And when she came back, her smile was a little too forced. Her lipstick was freshly reapplied. She looked reset. I kept thinking, this isn't jealousy. This isn't paranoia. This is instinct. And instinct doesn't show up like this unless there's a reason. The table conversation drifted toward future plans, vacations, friend getaways, baby announcements. Someone brought up a trip to Asheville in the fall. Jessica chimed in quickly, talking about how she'd probably be busy with work around then. That caught me off guard. She hadn't mentioned any fall travel. Not to me. It felt like she was living a step ahead. A version of life I hadn't been invited into yet. On the ride home, she was chatty, buzzed from champagne and compliments. She kept the music on, tapping her fingers to the rhythm, occasionally laughing to herself like she was still riding the high of being celebrated. "You okay?" she asked at one point, glancing over. "Yeah," I said. "You had a good night." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't really talk much. I just liked seeing you enjoy yourself." She reached over and gave my thigh a squeeze, The way you do when you're trying to maintain an asterisk Macy without committing to it. Well, thanks for making it special. I didn't respond. I just nodded and looked back at the road. Back home. She went straight to the bathroom. I heard the door lock. Then the water running. The familiar sound of her nighttime routine. Face wash, electric toothbrush, tapping against the porcelain sink. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, mind racing. When she came out, she smiled again. I'm wiped. You coming to bed? Yeah, in a minute, I said. She nodded and crawled in, turning away from me as she pulled the comforter up over her shoulder. I sat there for a while after the lights were out, staring into the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about all the small things I'd overlooked, not because I was naive, but because I wanted to believe the best in her. I wanted to believe we were solid, that even if we were a little off lately, we'd find our way back. But something about that night, that name, that message, the way she laughed just a little too hard when I caught her, told me we weren't in the same story anymore. She was already living a different chapter. I was just a footnote waiting to be edited out. And that was the moment, right there in the quiet, in the dark, when I realized something had changed. Not just between us, but inside me. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have a plan. But I knew I had just watched the beginning of the end. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I lay there in the dark beside Jessica, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of her breath while my thoughts churned like a storm tide I couldn't stop. It wasn't just about the message anymore. It wasn't even about the man behind it, RT or whoever he was. It was the context that hit me harder than anything. All the things I'd ignored over the past few months now clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. It started small, a weird kind of absence in the room, even when she was sitting right there next to me. Jessica used to fill the house with energy. She used to laugh in ways that made me look up from whatever I was doing. She'd hum while making coffee, sit on the arm of my chair while scrolling through her phone. All those little gestures, they were just gone, replaced by distance, silence, and subtle withdrawal. Back in March, she started staying later at work. Not all the time, but often enough to become a pattern. Client meetings, she said, or presentation prep. At first, I believed her, not because she was convincing, but because trust wasn't something I ever thought I needed to question. We'd built a whole life around that assumption. Then there were the weekends. She used to spend lazy Saturday mornings with me in our sunroom, sipping coffee and arguing about what to binge-watch next. But suddenly, weekends turned into workdays. Big pitch on Monday. Annual reviews coming up. I'm just behind on some reports. She'd leave with her laptop bag but no charger. She'd be gone for hours but come home without any sign of actual work having been done. I told myself not to overthink it. Told myself she deserved space, independence. But the truth is, I didn't want to admit I could feel her drifting slowly, but unmistakably, into a different orbit. There were wardrobe changes too. I used to tease her about being sweatpants royalty on weekends. She never dressed up unless she had to. But then came the new dresses, the heels, the shift in perfume. At first, it was subtle, just a change in taste, maybe. But it evolved. She started dressing up for errands, putting on lipstick to pick up groceries. I remember asking once, jokingly, "Who are you getting so dolled up for, Trader Joe?" She just laughed. Can't a girl feel cute sometimes? Sure, she could. But the sometimes turned into every time. And her energy felt less like confidence and more like auditioning. Not for me, for someone else. The phone habits were the loudest clue. The red flags I tried hardest to ignore. Jessica was never glued to her phone before. She hated being plugged in all the time, called herself old school. But suddenly it was always with her. Always face down, notifications silenced. And if it ever lit up, she'd grab it like it held state secrets. One night I asked her, gently, if everything was okay between us. We were watching TV, and she barely looked up from scrolling. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Just feels like we've been kind of disconnected lately." She sighed and paused her scrolling, then leaned against me. "Work's been insane, babe. I've been in survival mode, that's all. I'm sorry if I've been distant. I nodded. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But even in that moment, her head on my shoulder, her hand finding mine, I felt the gap between us like an invisible wall neither of us knew how to knock down anymore. There were other things too, little moments that didn't mean much until they were put under the same lens. Like the time I found a small receipt from a hotel in her coat pocket. She said she'd used the hotel business center to print something for a meeting because FedEx was closed. I didn't press it. Why would I? It sounded plausible enough. Or the time I caught her laughing over a text, then looking guilty when I walked into the room. I asked who it was. She said, oh, just Rachel. Something about her dog. I said, let me see. Just teasing. She pulled her phone back and said, it's dumb. You wouldn't get it. That stuck with me. It was the way she said it, defensive, dismissive, too fast. And then there were the nights she went out with friends but wouldn't post anything. Jessica used to be all over Instagram when she was out, selfies, food pics, check-ins. Then, nothing. Not even tagged photos. Just black holes of time I was expected to take at face value. And I did. Until now. That birthday dinner had become the turning point. I couldn't unsee the message. Couldn't forget the way her body language shifted when I glanced at her phone. Couldn't erase the sound of her laughter after realizing she'd been caught, a cover-up wrapped in charm. She was asleep beside me, peaceful, unbothered. But I was coming apart. Every memory played in sequence, lining up with surgical precision. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. A story I hadn't been reading closely enough, now unfolding all at once in my mind like a film on fast forward. She'd emotionally detached from me long before that birthday dinner. I just hadn't realized I was already living in her rearview. What cut deepest was the realization that she had used my loyalty against me. My predictability. My routines. My kindness. She'd built a whole other life on top of the one we shared, using the foundation I'd laid emotionally, financially, structurally to stand on while she turned her attention elsewhere. And she still said, I love you. Still kissed me goodbye. Still wore the ring. But those weren't signs of love anymore. They were camouflage. I got out of bed around 4 a.m. and went into the kitchen. Poured a glass of water I didn't drink. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. All I could think was, I didn't lose her. She left me quietly while pretending she hadn't. That was the betrayal. Not just the cheating, the pretending. The performance. And I didn't know what scared me more, the idea that she might still be lying or the idea that she didn't feel the need to anymore. The next morning, Jessica left early for what she said was a last-minute client meeting. It was a Sunday. She barely touched the breakfast I made, claimed she wasn't hungry. Then she kissed my cheek, barely, and walked out the door with that oversized tote she always brought when she wanted it to look like she had work to do. The door clicked shut behind her like punctuation. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space she left behind. The lie had been said with so much ease, so much casual rhythm that I realized it wasn't a new one. It had been practiced. Worn in like a pair of shoes. She had told that lie before, maybe not those exact words, but in spirit. I could feel it. And I'd had enough of feeling. I needed truth. Not suspicion. Not intuition. Not this bottomless pit of doubt that kept me pacing the floor at night while she slept peacefully a few feet away. That's when I remembered the home server. Years ago, when I was still deep in my DIY tech phase, I'd set up a backup system in the house. All our phones, laptops, and shared folders were linked to it for convenience. We barely used it now. Jessica probably didn't even remember it existed. But I never turned it off. I grabbed my laptop, went into the spare room, and pulled up the server interface. I hadn't touched it in ages. It took a while to get in, but eventually the familiar dashboard appeared. Archive logs. Device backups. Synced media. It was all there, a digital time capsule quietly collecting every bit of data we'd fed it over the years. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. I just knew there was something in there, something real. Something she hadn't deleted or hidden because she didn't realize it had been saved elsewhere. The system had done a full media sync about 6 weeks ago during one of her conference weekends in Orlando. She told me it was a marketing summit. Said she'd be sharing a hotel suite with 2 other women from her team. I even helped her pack. Told her she looked incredible in the slate blue blazer she wore the morning she left. She smiled, kissed me, and said, "You're the best husband ever." I opened the photo folder from that week and began scrolling. Most of it was what I expected. Generic Snapchat *TS, some PDFs, boring hotel room selfies she'd likely taken for Instagram stories. Nothing too revealing. But then I found it. buried inside a folder labeled slides_Orlando2023.zip. That alone was weird. She never zipped her files. I extracted it. Inside was a collection of videos. Most were screen recordings of presentations, but one stood out immediately. It was grainier, different resolution, and it had no business being mixed in with work files. I clicked on it. It started with a view of a hotel room, not the sterile kind you'd use for business. This was an asterisk, mate. Dim lighting. Music playing softly in the background. There was Jessica sitting on the edge of the bed, barefoot, wearing a casual black tank and leggings, the kind of outfit she'd never wear to a meeting. Her hair was down. She was laughing at something off camera. Then he stepped into view. Tall, tan, confident in that relaxed, almost smug way. They were talking like they'd done this before, like this wasn't some awkward first night between two colleagues making a mistake. This was practiced. Routine. They moved around each other easily. Too easily. Then he leaned in, brushing her hair behind her ear, and kissed her, not a quick peck, not some heat-of-the-moment slip-up, but a slow, in asterisk mate, familiar kiss. She closed her eyes like she'd been waiting for it. I paused the video. Just sat there stunned. Not crying. Not yelling. Just hollow. Like someone had reached inside and flipped a switch off. That was him. Archie logistics. I didn't need to confirm it, I knew. The way she looked at him in that clip was a look I hadn't seen in a long time. Not directed at me, anyway. I hit play again. They kept talking. He called her Jay. She joked about getting caught. He said, "Don't worry. He trusts you." They both laughed. My hand clenched into a fist around the mouse. I watched for another 2 minutes. That's all I could handle. It didn't go graphic, nothing overt. But it didn't need to. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. Emotional. This wasn't just cheating, it was a replacement. A reallocation of love. Of time. Of an asterisk Macy. I closed the laptop, not sure if I wanted to smash it or throw it into the ocean. Instead, I took a deep breath. And then I watched the video one more time, this time not with anger, but with clarity. With intention. I saved the file, timestamped it, and moved it into a folder labeled legal. Then I kept digging. The more I searched, the more I found notes synced from her iPad, email drafts to RT, hotel confirmations she never mentioned. Even some digital photo timestamps that didn't match her story about nights in with the girls. It was all there. Layered, detailed, damning. But I didn't rage. I didn't blow up her phone. I didn't march into her office or explode the truth into the world. I sat there and started planning. See, I wasn't going to let her define how this ended. Not anymore. She made her decisions. Hid her choices behind conference calls and makeup and half-truths. But I was done playing my role in her cover story. I began compiling everything. Every receipt, every screenshot, every message that didn't line up. I created a folder for the attorney I hadn't hired yet but knew I soon would. I printed key files. Backed everything up to an external drive. One copy for legal. One for myself. And one for the safety deposit box. As I worked, a strange calm came over me, not peace, not yet, but certainty. This was over. Not in some dramatic blow-up or screaming match. Not with a shattered plate or a slammed door. This would end quietly. Deliberately. Cleanly. Because the proof was no longer theoretical. No longer emotional. It was right there, pixelated and undeniable. She didn't just break trust. She rewrote the script of our lives while expecting me to keep reading my lines like nothing had changed. But I'd seen the final scene now. And I was already working on my exit. There was no confrontation. No screaming in the hallway, no dramatic declarations of betrayal. No teary standoff in the kitchen. I didn't throw her clothes onto the lawn or demand answers through gritted teeth. I already had everything I needed, the truth in high-definition clarity, backed up 3 times and timestamped by the cloud. That was my closure. Now it was about execution. My first call was to an attorney I'd quietly bookmarked months ago. I didn't even know why at the time, maybe intuition had been building longer than I realized. His name was Marshall Graves. Clean reputation, surgical approach, no theatrics. Just the kind of lawyer you want when your life is about to detonate but you still plan on walking away with your shirt still pressed. We met on a Wednesday, 3 days after I found the video. His office was tucked away in a mid-rise overlooking Piedmont Park, a place that smelled like mahogany and old money. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He reviewed the evidence. When he looked up, his voice was calm and even. "You've done your homework," he said. "I don't want to fight," I told him. "I just want to walk away intact. No drama. No headlines. I want it clean." Marshall nodded. "We can do that. But it won't feel clean for her. Not the way you're planning to do this. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I gave him everything, the files, the access, the paper trail. I had dates, bank statements, text logs, metadata, and 3 overlapping lies she told me during the Orlando trip alone. He told me I'd likely have the upper hand in the split if I moved fast and didn't warn her. So I didn't. The first move was financial. I had already started by freezing the joint credit cards. Not in a way she'd notice immediately, no notifications, just a technical issue that would quietly decline any new charges. I transferred my direct deposit to a solo account under a different bank. Then I went into our shared savings and initiated a withdrawal to a trust fund in my name only, citing long-term estate management. I left just enough behind to avoid suspicion. Her access to my accounts? Revoked. Passwords changed. 2-factor removed. Biometric keys updated. Every app we used for bills or subscriptions. I replaced the login details and removed her contact info. Our digital life, the one she probably assumed she still controlled, started to vanish under her nose. Then came the physical layer. We owned a home together. Technically, it was in both our names. But the mortgage had been in my name since the refinance. Her investment had been nominal. She never cared much about the paperwork, so I used that to my advantage. With Marshall's help, I began preparing a revised ownership transfer. Not to kick her out, not yet, but to shift leverage. I cover the buyout. I'd even offer a generous settlement. But she'd have no right to dispute the division once the evidence hit the table. I updated the security system next. New pins. New admin facial recognition recalibrated, hers deleted. She wouldn't even notice that one until later. But it mattered. The final step was the information dump, not to her but to Marshall. I handed over everything. Emails, *TS, digital maps showing where she'd been when she said she was somewhere else. Photos, the hotel video, a backup copy of the RT Logistics text log she thought she'd deleted. The GPS pings from her car I downloaded before wiping the system. All of it. A curated dossier of betrayal formatted like a corporate audit. Marshall was impressed. "This is airtight," he said. "If she contests, she'll lose. Hard." "Then she won't contest," I said. "She doesn't want this getting out." He nodded. "Then let's make her an offer." We drafted the petition for divorce with a single, simple clause. A sealed settlement in exchange for silence. She'd get a lump sum payout. No public filings, no social media blasts, no guilt trip texts to friends. We'd say irreconcilable differences. Split amicably and move on. By the time we finalized the paperwork, I had already booked a 2-week rental across town. A condo with high windows, brick walls, and nothing inside that reminded me of her. I packed my essentials in silence. Clothes, documents, a few books, the guitar she always rolled her eyes at. Everything else stayed. Let her live in the echo for a while. The night before I left, I walked through the house like I was touring a museum of a marriage that used to mean something. I paused in the kitchen where we used to cook together. In the den, where we watched shows until she had to get back to work. In the hallway where her heels used to click like metronome beats as she left for meetings. And then I left a single manila envelope on the entryway table. Inside, a clean copy of the divorce papers, a letter from Marshall, and a pre-written statement for her to sign confirming the terms of the private separation. At the bottom of the page was a printed message. No fights, no blame, just truth, and a clean exit. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. The next morning, she came home to silence. No car in the garage. No clothes in the closet. The house still smelled like the lavender candle she always lit when she was expecting company. Only now the company was gone. She called me 9 times. Then she texted. Then emailed. Then texted again. "Where are you? What is this? I'm freaking out. Please call me. Mark, what's going on? Is this a joke? Please just talk to me." I didn't respond. She wasn't ghosted. She was being extracted. Quietly, surgically. Just like she had extracted herself from our relationship months ago. Only now it was my turn. Marshall emailed her the digital version of the documents later that afternoon. She opened them within 10 minutes. By evening, she'd called him too. She tried to delay. Said she was confused. Said she didn't understand what was happening. Said I must be mistaken. That this wasn't the way to handle things. Marshall replied with a one-line message. You'll find everything explained clearly in the attached exhibits. This is not a request. It's a resolution. By the time the weekend ended, she had signed. The severance was generous. Too generous, some might say. But it wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries. It was about making the message stick. You cannot set fire to something and then cry when it turns to ash. When I checked the house security feed one last time, I saw her standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't using it. She wasn't moving. Just standing. Maybe she thought I'd come back. But the door was already closed. The silence was the answer. I always knew Jessica would try to maintain control. Even as I left, even as the documents landed in her inbox and the keys changed hands, I could picture her running through scenarios, rehearsing responses. Trying to figure out how to spin this. Not to me, not anymore, but to her friends, her colleagues, her audience. She was always aware of the optics. Always 2 steps ahead when it came to appearances. But what she didn't realize was that the systems she relied on to project that control, the digital scaffolding of her image, had never really belonged to her. They belonged to me. It started the morning after she signed the settlement. Her phone buzzed, like usual, at 7:15 a.m. She always kept her alarms precise. Only this time, when she tried to check her calendar, the app froze. Then crashed. When she tapped her bank app, it logged her out. She tried again. Password invalid. She reset it. Still nothing. The credit card terminal declined her Apple Pay at the coffee shop. She laughed awkwardly, said something about fraud alerts, and swiped the physical card. Declined again. She tried her backup. Declined. Jessica didn't know yet that the accounts were no longer shared, not even the backup card I used to refill for convenience. That one had been quietly canceled too. By 10 a.m. she was getting the first texts. Her group chat with the girls lit up. Hey, are you having trouble with the trip fund? I tried to book our Airbnb, but the shared account says restricted. Did you move the money somewhere? That group fund had been something I managed for years, monthly deposits we all contributed to for vacations, events, birthdays. Jessica liked being the one who organized everything, but the back end? The routing, spreadsheets, access controls, that had been me. I didn't delete the account. I just froze it. By lunchtime, she'd realized she couldn't access our streaming platforms either. Netflix, Spotify, even the shared iCloud. They were all under my credentials. The family plan she always used to store her photos disconnected. Then came the vehicle. Her SUV, the one we leased in my name with insurance under my account, was remotely disabled by noon. I scheduled the repossession the week prior. I had it timed for maximum impact. She'd park it at her usual spot outside the gym, head in for her class, and return to find an empty space. The company was courteous. They left her a digital receipt and an automated message. Vehicle lease closed per request of authorized owner. Please contact for further details. That afternoon, the first real cracks started to show. She posted a story on Instagram, just a black screen with wow. No explanation. Just drama bait. Then came the vague tweets. Some people really aren't who you think they are. Trust is a joke these days. You go to sleep with someone and wake up with a stranger. But she didn't tag me. She couldn't. Because by that point, she was already unfollowed, unmatched, and unlisted. I hadn't blocked her, that would have been too obvious. I just removed myself from her network. Quietly. Permanently. By evening, the text messages started shifting in tone. What the hell are you doing? You said this would be clean. Why are you punishing me? I signed, Mark. You got what you wanted. But I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about exposure. A surgical unmasking of the life she thought she controlled, revealing just how much of it had been borrowed. Enabled. Protected by someone she no longer respected. The collapse wasn't explosive. It was layered. First, the money gone. Then, the conveniences gone. Then, the silence. That silence drove her mad. She started calling people we both knew, mutual friends, coworkers, even distant acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in months. One by one, they reached out to me. Dude, Jessica's blowing up my phone. What happened? She says you left her with nothing. I sent them all the same response. She made her decisions. I'm just stepping away. I never trashed her. Never ranted. Never dropped the video or screenshot ts into group chats, though part of me wanted to. But no, I didn't need to say it. People connected the dots on their own. Especially after she made one crucial mistake. She tried to rewrite the story before I was done telling mine. She went to our closest mutual friends, the couple we used to double date with, and said I'd abandoned her out of nowhere, that she woke up and he was just gone. But they didn't buy it, because I had already sent them a message, just one, the day I moved out. Hey, just a heads up, Jessica and I are separating. It's not a surprise, not really. I've kept it private until now, but I wanted you to hear it from me before it all gets messy. I wish her well. Please don't take sides. I didn't mention the cheating. I didn't need to. But they knew me. And the way she was scrambling for sympathy didn't match the quiet way I was disappearing. That contrast made people suspicious. And suspicion leads to questions. By day 3, the group chat that once crowned her queen of high-functioning adulthood had turned cold. People stopped liking her posts. Her stories were viewed but no longer replied to. She was still performing, but the applause had died out. The digital reputation she'd curated, filtered photos, humble brag captions, curated vulnerability, began to unravel. Not because of anything I said, but because the foundation she'd built it on was cracking in real time. And then, the worst thing imaginable for someone like her happened. She got ignored. The attention faded. The outreach slowed. The sympathy dried up. And in that vacuum, she had to face the truth she tried so hard to bury. She had been protected, supported, carried, not by money or charisma, but by proximity. To me. Now that proximity was gone. And with it, the illusion of control. I don't know what she told RT. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I didn't care. He never reached out. Never tried to step in. That silence said enough. Either he knew what she'd done, or he never cared enough to ask. But Jessica cared. Deeply. I could tell by the timestamped texts that started appearing late at night. Please, can we just talk? I made a mistake. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't want to be erased. That last one hit me. Because that was exactly what I had done. Not out of revenge. Not even out of anger. But because it was the only way to reclaim my peace, to remove her so fully from my life that she couldn't even leave a shadow behind. By the end of the week, her name was off the lease, off the insurance, off the tax documents, off the emergency contacts. Even our wedding photos gone from the cloud, backed up once, then stored in a drive with no labels. She didn't lose me. She lost access. And that's what broke her. Not the separation. Not the exposure. But the quiet, deliberate deletion of the version of her that only existed when I was there to believe in it. Jessica tried every angle. She messaged my sister, emailed my old coworkers, even called the tax attorney who once handled our joint filing. No one answered. Everyone had been briefed. She was slowly realizing she didn't just lose me, she'd been erased from every room she thought she could re-enter. Shared photos vanished. Cloud access revoked. Her face no longer opened anything. Even the dog's vet records listed me as the sole contact. The more she reached out, the more quiet she got back. It wasn't rage or revenge, it was surgical distance. And every day, the version of her that once lived in my world got smaller, dimmer, and finally silent. Exactly a year later, she returned to that rooftop lounge. Same dress. Same table. But alone. A glass of wine sat untouched until a waiter brought her an envelope. Inside, a card. He left. She lost. He erased. Across the street, I walked calmly with someone new, her laugh easy, her hand steady in mine. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Jessica stayed seated, staring at the skyline that once sparkled for her. The message had landed. Not with chaos, but with clarity. Quiet. Permanent. Final.